First contact in crisis. The Starship Endeavour hung motionless against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of an alien sun. Captain Rachel Hammond stood at the bridge's observation window, her weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lighting. 20 years of deep space exploration hadn't prepared her for this moment. Signal confirmed, Captain. First Officer James Harrison reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. It's definitely a distress beacon, but nothing like we've ever encountered before. Rachel nodded, her gray eyes fixed on the massive vessel drifting before them. The alien ship was easily 3 times the size of the Endeavour, its architecture defying human engineering logic with impossible curves and materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Life signs, she asked, though she already knew the answer. The preliminary scans had been running since they dropped out of FTL travel 10 hours ago. Failing, but present, Lieutenant Kira Patil answered from the science station. Environmental systems are critical. Whatever's wrong in there, it's bad, Captain. Rachel squared her shoulders, feeling the weight of command more heavily than ever. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, but despite all their exploration, they had yet to make first contact with an advanced civilization. Now, finding one might mean watching them die. Prep the medical bay, she ordered. Dr. Navian, I want you suited up and ready for anything. Harrison, you're with me. Lieutenant Patel, you have the bridge. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of preparation. Rachel stood in the airlock chamber, checking the seals on her containment suit one final time. Beside her, Harrison and Dr. Navian did the same, their movements precise and practiced. Remember, Rachel said, her voice slightly distorted through the suit's comm system, we're dealing with an unknown species. Standard first contact protocols apply, but our priority is humanitarian aid. Clear. Clear, Captain, they responded in unison. The airlock cycled, and they pushed off toward the alien vessel. Their magnetic boots engaged as they landed on its hull, the surface seeming to ripple slightly beneath their feet. Using cutting-edge universal translation software and following what appeared to be emergency access protocols, they managed to gain entry through an auxiliary airlock. The interior of the ship was unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. Corridors curved and branched in ways that seemed to follow some alien geometry, and the air was thick with a purple-tinged mist that their suits' sensors identified as a complex atmospheric mixture. They found the first of the aliens in what appeared to be their equivalent of a medical bay. The beings were tall, easily 8 feet in height, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their bodies were vaguely humanoid, but possessed an ethereal quality that made them seem almost incorporeal. Dr. Navian immediately began scanning the nearest alien with his medical tricorder, his dark eyes widening behind his faceplate. Captain, these readings, they're experiencing some sort of systematic cellular breakdown. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. One of the aliens stirred, its color-shifting skin pulsing weakly. A sound emerged from it, and their translation software began working overtime to decode the complex harmonics. Help, please, the translation finally came through, the alien's multifaceted eyes focusing on Rachel. We are the Xylaxians, our people, dying. Pathogen, engineered weapon, no cure. Rachel moved closer, her training warring with her instinct to comfort. I'm Captain Rachel Hammond of the Earth ship Endeavour. We're here to help. The alien's colors shifted again, this time to a deep blue that seemed to indicate both hope and desperation. Others, in stasis. Last colony ship, thousands sleeping. Must survive. Harrison's voice came through the private command channel. Captain, if this is really an engineered pathogen, we're looking at a potential genocide in progress. The implications. I know, Rachel cut him off, her mind already racing through the possibilities and consequences. This wasn't just first contact anymore. This was a moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. She opened a channel to the Endeavour. Paddle, get me a secure link to Earth Command, Priority Alpha, and begin preparations for a full quarantine protocol. The alien leader's colors pulsed weakly again. Why? Help us. Unknown. To you. Rachel didn't hesitate. Because that's what we do. That's who we are. And if there's a way to save your people, we'll find it. As she spoke those words, she knew she was committing humanity to a course of action that would change everything. The diplomatic implications alone would be staggering, let alone the scientific and medical challenges ahead. But looking at these beings, their advanced civilization on the brink of extinction, she knew it was the only choice she could make. The next few hours were a blur of activity as they stabilized the alien ship's critical systems and began transferring medical data. Dr. Nevian worked tirelessly to understand the basics of Zelaxian biology, while Harrison coordinated with Earth Command on the logistics of what would become the largest humanitarian mission in human history. What none of them knew yet was that this moment, this single decision to stop and help, would not only save an alien species but fundamentally alter humanity's destiny among the stars. The universe was about to learn that humans, despite their relative technological infancy, possessed something far more valuable than advanced technology, an unshakable determination to help others in need, no matter the cost. As Rachel watched her crew work alongside the Zelaxians, she couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. The real challenges and the real opportunities still lay ahead. The race against time. The Starship Endeavour hung motionless against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of an alien sun. Captain Rachel Hammond stood at the bridge's observation window, her weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lighting. 20 years of deep space exploration hadn't prepared her for this moment. Signal confirmed, Captain. First Officer James Harrison reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. It's definitely a distress beacon, but nothing like we've ever encountered before. Rachel nodded, her gray eyes fixed on the massive vessel drifting before them. The alien ship was easily 3 times the size of the Endeavour, its architecture defying human engineering logic with impossible curves and materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Life signs, she asked, though she already knew the answer. The preliminary scans had been running since they dropped out of FTL travel 10 hours ago. Failing, but present, Lieutenant Kira Patil answered from the science station. Environmental systems are critical. Whatever's wrong in there, it's bad, Captain. Rachel squared her shoulders, feeling the weight of command more heavily than ever. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, but despite all their exploration, they had yet to make first contact with an advanced civilization. Now, finding one might mean watching them die. Prep the medical bay, she ordered. Dr. Nevian, I want you suited up and ready for anything. Harrison, you're with me. Lieutenant Patel, you have the bridge. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of preparation. Rachel stood in the airlock chamber, checking the seals on her containment suit one final time. Beside her, Harrison and Dr. Nevian did the same, their movements precise and practiced. Remember, Rachel said, her voice slightly distorted through the suit's comm system, we're dealing with an unknown species. Standard first contact protocols apply, but our priority is humanitarian aid. Clear. Clear, Captain, they responded in unison. The airlock cycled, and they pushed off toward the alien vessel. Their magnetic boots engaged as they landed on its hull, the surface seeming to ripple slightly beneath their feet. Using cutting-edge universal translation software and following what appeared to be emergency access protocols, they managed to gain entry through an auxiliary airlock. The interior of the ship was unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. Corridors curved and branched in ways that seemed to follow some alien geometry, and the air was thick with a purple-tinged mist that their suits' sensors identified as a complex atmospheric mixture. They found the first of the aliens in what appeared to be their equivalent of a medical bay. The beings were tall, easily 8 feet in height, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their bodies were vaguely humanoid, but possessed an ethereal quality that made them seem almost incorporeal. Dr. Naveen immediately began scanning the nearest alien with his medical tricorder, his dark eyes widening behind his faceplate. "Captain, these readings, they're experiencing some sort of systematic cellular breakdown. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." One of the aliens stirred, its color-shifting skin pulsing weakly. A sound emerged from it, and their translation software began working overtime to decode the complex harmonics. "Help, please." The translation finally came through, the alien's multifaceted eyes focusing on Rachel. "We are the Zalaxians. Our people. Dying. Pathogen. Engineered weapon. No cure." Rachel moved closer, her training warring with her instinct to comfort. "I'm Captain Rachel Hammond of the Earth ship Endeavor. We're here to help." The alien's colors shifted again, this time to a deep blue that seemed to indicate both hope and desperation. "Others, in stasis. Last colony ship. Thousands sleeping. Must survive." Harrison's voice came through the private command channel. "Captain, if this is really an engineered pathogen, we're looking at a potential genocide in progress. The implications—" "I know." Rachel cut him off, her mind already racing through the possibilities and consequences. This wasn't just first contact anymore. This was a moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. She opened a channel to the Endeavor. "Paddle, get me a secure link to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. And begin preparations for a full quarantine protocol." The alien leader's colors pulsed weakly again. "Why? Help us? Unknown. To you." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Because that's what we do. That's who we are. And if there's a way to save your people, we'll find it." As she spoke those words, she knew she was committing humanity to a course of action that would change everything. The diplomatic implications alone would be staggering, let alone the scientific and medical challenges ahead. But looking at these beings, their advanced civilization on the brink of extinction, she knew it was the only choice she could make. The next few hours were a blur of activity as they stabilized the alien ship's critical systems and began transferring medical data. Dr. Naveen worked tirelessly to understand the basics of Zalaxian biology, while Harrison coordinated with Earth Command on the logistics of what would become the largest humanitarian mission in human history. What none of them knew yet was that this moment, this single decision to stop and help, would not only save an alien species but fundamentally alter humanity's destiny among the stars. The universe was about to learn that humans, despite their relative technological infancy, possessed something far more valuable than advanced technology: an unshakable determination to help others in need, no matter the cost. As Rachel watched her crew work alongside the Zalaxians, she couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. The real challenges and the real opportunities still lay ahead. The Endeavor's medical bay had never been so crowded. Dr. Naveen's team worked around the clock, their containment suits making every movement more challenging as they processed endless streams of data about Zalaxian physiology. The purple mist that filled the alien ship had been replicated in a sealed chamber where they kept their patients, the strange atmosphere necessary for the alien survival. "Their genetic structure is fascinating," Dr. Naveen explained to Captain Hammond, pointing to a holographic display of rotating DNA-like molecules. "It's similar to our double helix, but with additional structural elements we've never seen before. The pathogen targets these unique components." Rachel studied the display, though the complex biochemistry was well outside her expertise. "How bad is it?" "Without intervention, the entire species will be extinct within 6 months," he replied grimly. "The pathogen is remarkably efficient. It lies dormant until activated by specific biological triggers, then spreads rapidly through their population." The door hissed open, admitting Harrison with a fresh batch of reports. "Earth Command is fully mobilized. Every major research facility has been brought online. The Chinese Medical Institute, European Biological Research Center, and Pan-African Science Foundation are all coordinating efforts. And the political situation? Rachel asked, knowing that not everyone would welcome this sudden alliance with an alien species. Harrison's expression tightened. Mixed. Most nations are supporting the effort, but there's opposition. Some religious groups are calling it divine judgment. Others worry about the resource drain. The isolation party is gaining support in some regions. A soft chime interrupted them. The quarantine chamber's communication system. Inside, the Zylaxian leader they now knew as First Speaker Veller had regained consciousness. Their iridescent skin flickered with patterns that the translation software was learning to interpret as emotional indicators. The stasis pods. Veller's translated voice came through clearly now, though still carrying harmonics human vocal cords couldn't produce. Have you found a way to safely wake the others? Rachel approached the transparent barrier. Not yet, First Speaker. We believe the pathogen is triggered by normal metabolic processes. Keeping your people in stasis may be the only thing preventing a full outbreak. Then they are safe, for now. Veller's colors shifted to what they'd learned was an expression of relief. But they cannot remain frozen forever. Our entire civilization, our art, our science, our history, all of it rests within those pods. Dr. Naveen cleared his throat. Captain, there's something else you should see. He manipulated the holographic display, bringing up a new set of molecular structures. We've been analyzing the pathogen's design. This wasn't just engineered. It was specifically crafted to target Zylaxian biology with almost surgical precision. You mean this was deliberate? Rachel felt her jaw tighten. Who would have the capability to do this? That's just it, Harrison interjected, stepping closer to examine the display. According to the Zylaxian database, they were the most technologically advanced species in their region of space. Whoever did this had to be more advanced than them. Rachel finished the thought. First Speaker, do you know who attacked your people? Veller's colors darkened to deep purples and blacks. We never saw them. Never knew they existed until the sickness began. By then, it was too late. We launched our colony ships, hoping to escape, to preserve something of our civilization. But the pathogen followed us, dormant in our bodies, waiting. A junior researcher burst into the medical bay, their excitement barely contained. Doctor, Captain, we found something. They thrust a tablet toward Dr. Naveen, who began reading rapidly, his eyes widening. This is extraordinary, he breathed. Initial tests show that human blood samples demonstrate an unexpected interaction with the pathogen. Something in our immune system. It's not much, but it's actually fighting back against the disease. Rachel looked sharply at the doctor. Are you saying humans might be naturally resistant? Not resistant exactly, he corrected, but our immune system responds to it in a way the Zylaxians can't. If we can understand why, if we can isolate that factor and adapt it to work with their biology, then we might have the beginnings of a cure, Harrison finished. The news spread quickly through both ships. Human and Zylaxian scientists began working side by side, the language barrier becoming less relevant as they focused on the universal constants of biology and chemistry. But they were racing against time. The pathogen was adapting, becoming more aggressive in the few conscious Zylaxians they were treating. Earth's scientific community mobilized on a scale never before seen. Traditional rivalries between institutions and nations were set aside as researchers shared data and theories freely. The endeavor became the focal point of humanity's first major xenobiological research project, with Dr. Naveen coordinating teams across two worlds. But not everyone saw the situation the same way. Reports from Earth spoke of growing protests, of people afraid of alien diseases and demanding isolation. Some politicians began calling for the Zylaxian ship to be quarantined permanently, arguing that the risk to humanity was too great. Rachel stood at her familiar spot by the bridge window, watching the massive alien vessel that had changed everything. Harrison joined her, knowing her well enough to read her concern. "Second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied without hesitation. "But I can't help thinking about the implications. Whoever engineered this pathogen is still out there. A species capable of this level of biological warfare. What else might they be capable of?" "All the more reason to help the Zalaxians," Harrison said. "We might need allies sooner than we think." Rachel nodded slowly. "Send word to Earth Command. Tell them we need more resources, more personnel. If human biology holds the key to saving these people, then we owe it to them, and to ourselves, to try." As she gave the order, a new alert flashed across the bridge screens. Something was happening in the stasis pods. The pathogen was evolving faster than they'd predicted, and the pods' containment systems were beginning to fail. Their window of opportunity was closing rapidly, and the race against time had just become even more desperate. Unity through adversity. The news of humanity's potential compatibility with the Zalaxian pathogen spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. Within days, ships began arriving from distant sectors of space, vessels of shapes and sizes that human eyes had never witnessed before. The Endeavor's long-range sensors counted over 30 different species, all drawn by the word of a possible cure. "I never imagined our first galactic conference would happen like this," Captain Rachel Hammond mused, watching through the observation deck as another crystalline ship dropped out of FTL, its surface refracting starlight like a massive diamond. The Endeavor had become the center of an impromptu space station, with vessels carefully arranged in a complex orbital pattern. Each brought their own scientists, their own medical knowledge, and most importantly, their own reasons for helping. "The Myriad Collective offers their biological databases," announced a floating orb of pure energy, its thoughts translated through the now-enhanced communication systems. "Our species has encountered 37 million distinct biological patterns. Perhaps comparison will yield insights." The Tekeri, insectoid beings with advanced cybernetic augmentations, contributed their quantum computing networks. The Varan, aquatic creatures who lived in ships filled with pressurized liquid, shared their expertise in viral mutation patterns. Each new arrival brought another piece to the puzzle. Dr. Navian hadn't slept in days, his eyes red-rimmed but bright with excitement as he coordinated with alien scientists. "It's extraordinary," he told Rachel during one of their brief updates. "Each species approaches the problem from a completely different angle. The Tekeri see it as a code to be broken. The Varan treat it like ocean currents to be redirected. Together, we're making breakthroughs that would have taken centuries alone." But success brought its own complications. Earth's political landscape was fracturing under the pressure of sudden galactic attention. The Isolation Party had grown from a fringe movement to a significant political force, led by charismatic speaker Marcus Wells. "How dare we risk humanity's future?" Wells's voice boomed across news channels worldwide. "These aliens appear from nowhere, bringing disease and danger, and we welcome them with open arms. What if this is exactly what they wanted? To gather all their forces around Earth under the guise of helping." Rachel watched the transmission with growing concern. "He's gaining support," Harrison noted, standing beside her. "Latest polls show 30% of Earth's population now supports complete isolation from alien contact." 30% who'd let an entire species die out of fear," Rachel replied, her voice tight with frustration. "And they don't even realize the greater threat. Whoever engineered this pathogen is still out there, watching. If they could do this to the Zalaxians, they could do it to us," Harrison finished grimly. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A junior human geneticist, working alongside a Tekeri quantum biologist and a Varan flow specialist, noticed something in the way human antibodies interacted with Zalaxian cellular structures. The human immune response wasn't just fighting the pathogen. It was adapting to it in a way that none of their advanced algorithms had predicted. "It's not about technological advancement," Dr. Navian explained to the assembled alien scientists, his excitement barely contained. "It's about evolutionary history. Earth's biosphere is incredibly hostile compared to most developed worlds. Humans evolved alongside countless pathogens, forcing our immune systems to become incredibly adaptable. We're not more advanced. We're just more experienced at fighting diseases. The first trials began immediately. Volunteer human donors provided blood samples that were processed through a complex series of treatments developed by the combined alien sciences. The modified human antibodies were then introduced to infected Xylaxian tissue samples. The results were promising, but time was running out. The stasis pods were failing faster now, their ancient systems unable to maintain stability against the evolving pathogen. Already, several pods had failed, their occupants lost before they could even be awakened. Then came the attack. It started with a series of small explosions in the Endeavor's research labs. Emergency force fields contained the damage, but vital equipment was destroyed. Security footage revealed several human crew members planting the devices, sleeper agents from the isolation party. "They're trying to sabotage the project," Harrison reported, his voice harsh with anger. "We've detained the suspects, but there could be more." Rachel made a ship-wide announcement. "This is your captain speaking. To those who believe they're protecting humanity by sabotaging our work, you're doing exactly what the real enemy wants. Whoever engineered this pathogen wanted to divide us, to make us fear each other. But humanity's strength has always been in our ability to unite against common threats, to help others even at great cost to ourselves. I'm ordering all non-essential personnel to submit to security screening, but I'm also asking for volunteers. We need human donors for the next phase of trials. And yes, there are risks. But if we don't take those risks now, we're betraying everything that makes us human." The response was overwhelming. Crew members lined up outside the medical bay, ready to donate blood, tissue samples, whatever was needed. The alien scientists watched in amazement as humans willingly exposed themselves to potential danger to help a species they'd only just met. Meanwhile, the combined fleet's sensors detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system. Someone was watching, their vessels cloaked but not quite perfectly hidden from the combined sensor technology of 30 different species. "Let them watch," Rachel told her alien counterparts during an emergency council. "Let them see what happens when they try to destroy one of us. They thought to isolate and eliminate the Xylaxians. Instead, they've united half the galaxy." The modified treatment was ready for full trials. But there was a catch. The process of adapting human antibodies to work with Xylaxian biology required live human tissue as a transmission medium. The donors would be exposed to the pathogen directly, facing unknown risks. Dr. Naveen volunteered to be the first. "We can't ask others to take risks we won't take ourselves," he said simply. As the first full trial began, ships continued to arrive from across the galaxy. Each new species brought their own stories of mysterious attacks, of biological weapons that had targeted isolated civilizations. A pattern was emerging, but for now, all eyes were on the Endeavor's medical bay, where humanity's dedication to helping others was about to be put to its greatest test. The universe held its breath, waiting to see if human determination and the combined knowledge of dozens of alien species would be enough to save a civilization from extinction, and perhaps begin to expose a threat that had been moving through the shadows of space for far longer than anyone had suspected. The price of progress. The Endeavor's medical bay had been transformed into something out of a fever dream. Banks of alien technology lined the walls, their functions barely comprehensible to human minds. Streams of data in dozens of languages flowed across holographic displays, while beams of all shapes and sizes worked in careful coordination. At the center of it all lay Dr. Naveen, his body connected to a complex array of medical equipment. His vital signs were stable, but his skin had taken on an unusual pallor, and occasional shivers ran through his body despite the temperature-controlled environment. "The human immune response is remarkable," commented the Techari chief scientist, their cybernetic eyes whirring as they analyzed the data. "The pathogen attempts to adapt, but the antibodies evolve faster. It's like watching eons of evolution compressed into hours." Captain Rachel Hammond stood at the observation window, her face tight with concern. She'd known the risks when she approved the trials, but watching one of her crew suffer was never easy. How long until we know if it worked? The modified antibodies have been successfully synthesized. The Varan flow specialist burbled through their liquid environment suit. We're beginning transmission to the first group of Zalaxian patients. The first group consisted of 5 Zalaxians who had volunteered despite their weakened condition. Their stasis pods had been among the most critically failing, leaving them little choice but to risk the experimental treatment. Hours crawled by. Rachel couldn't leave, couldn't rest. She stood vigil as both human donor and alien recipients fought their separate battles. The combined fleet maintained its protective formation around the Endeavor, their sensors still detecting those mysterious shadows at the system's edge. The attack, when it came, was subtle at first. A power fluctuation in the medical base containment systems, a slight variance in the atmospheric processors, small things that could have been dismissed as equipment strain. But Harrison had been waiting for something like this. Security breach detected. His voice cracked over the comm. Multiple systems compromised. Captain, they're trying to shut down life support in the medical bay. Rachel's training took over. Emergency protocols. Get those systems isolated now. The Tekari's cybernetic interfaces moved faster than human reflexes could follow, trying to counter the attack. But whoever was behind it had prepared well. Systems continued to fail, and alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The containment field is failing, one of the alien scientists reported. If it collapses, the pathogen could spread to the entire ship. Rachel hit the ship-wide comm. All non-essential personnel, evacuate to emergency shelters immediately. Medical team, prepare for emergency protocols. But Dr. Navian was already moving. Despite his weakened condition, he struggled to his feet, pulling monitoring equipment with him. The treatment synthesis must be maintained, he gasped. Without constant human biological input for the next 12 hours, the antibodies will break down. You can't stay here, Rachel argued. The containment field is the only thing keeping the pathogen contained, he finished. I know, but I'm already exposed. Better one life at risk than the entire ship. He managed a weak smile. Besides, someone needs to monitor the patients. Before Rachel could protest further, another alarm blared. The main doors to the medical bay slammed shut, emergency containment protocols engaging automatically. Through the observation window, she could see Dr. Navian moving between the Xylaxian patients, checking readings, adjusting equipment. Captain, Harrison's voice came through again. We've identified the source of the attack. It's coming from inside the ship. Someone physically interfaced with our systems. Security teams are in pursuit, but a massive explosion rocked the Endeavor. Emergency bulkheads slammed down throughout the ship as automated systems fought to contain the damage. Hull breach on Deck C, someone shouted. They're trying to vent the medical bay into space. The next few minutes were chaos. Security teams cornered the saboteurs. More isolation party extremists who had somehow infiltrated the crew. The alien fleet moved to protect the Endeavor's damaged sections, their combined shields forming an improvised patch over the hull breach. But in the medical bay, Dr. Navian worked on, even as the environmental systems fluctuated dangerously around him. The Xylaxian patients were too weak to be moved, and the treatment had progressed too far to be interrupted. Life support is failing, the Tekari reported. Backup systems are engaged, but they won't last long. Rachel slammed her fist against the observation window. There has to be something we can do. That's when they noticed the shadows at the edge of the system had begun to move. Multiple ships, their designs unlike anything seen before, were decloaking and moving into attack formation. All ships, battle stations, Rachel ordered. Form defensive perimeter. Whatever happens, we have to protect this treatment. It's not just about saving the Xylaxians anymore. This might be our only chance to understand who we're really fighting. The alien fleet responded instantly, their varied technologies combining to create a defense grid more powerful than anything humanity had ever witnessed. But the enemy ships didn't attack. Instead, they launched what appeared to be probe-like devices, thousands of them, all heading straight for the Endeavour. They're trying to finish what they started, Harrison realized. Those aren't weapons. They're delivery systems for a new strain of the pathogen. Inside the medical bay, Dr. Naveen watched the approaching swarm on his monitors. He knew what had to be done. With trembling hands, he began rerouting power from life support to the containment systems, strengthening them against the coming attack. "Doctor, what are you doing?" Rachel demanded, watching his actions on the external monitors. "You'll run out of air." "The treatment is working," he replied, his voice growing weaker. "The Zylaxian patients, their readings are stabilizing. We can't let them release a new strain now. Better to sacrifice one life than risk everything." The probe swarm hit the Endeavour's shields just as Dr. Naveen finished his modifications. The containment field held, protecting both the patients and the vital treatment synthesis process. But in the medical bay, alarms began to sound as oxygen levels dropped critically low. Through the observation window, Rachel watched helplessly as her chief medical officer sacrificed himself to save not just the Zylaxian patients, but potentially countless other species who might have been targeted next. His last act was to transmit all his medical data to the ship's computers, ensuring that even his death would serve to advance their understanding of the treatment. As the enemy ships prepared for their main assault, something unexpected happened. More vessels began dropping out of FTL. Hundreds of them, then thousands. The combined sensor networks of the alien fleet had broadcast everything that had happened, and the galaxy had responded. Species that had never worked together, some that had been ancient enemies, united in a show of force that made the mysterious attackers pause. The shadow ships, faced with overwhelming opposition, reversed course and vanished back into the darkness of space. But their retreat came too late to save Dr. Naveen. In the medical bay, his sacrifice had bought enough time. The treatment was working. The Zylaxian patients were showing clear signs of recovery, their iridescent skin beginning to pulse with stronger colors. Rachel stood at attention, tears in her eyes, as emergency teams finally managed to restore the medical bay systems. "Record in ship's log," she said, her voice steady despite her grief. Dr. Naveen gave his life, not just for the Zylaxian people, but for the principle that all sentient beings deserve our help, regardless of origin. His sacrifice marks not just a medical breakthrough, but a turning point in galactic history. As she spoke, the first reports began coming in from the stasis pods. The modified treatment was working there too. The Zylaxian civilization would survive, thanks to human determination, sacrifice, and the unprecedented cooperation of dozens of alien species. But the price had been high, and the mysterious enemy was still out there, watching from the shadows. The galaxy was changing, alliances were forming, and humanity had proven itself on a cosmic scale, not through superior technology or military might, but through their willingness to risk everything to help others in need. A new dawn. 6 months after Dr. Naveen's sacrifice, the Endeavour floated in high orbit above Earth, its hull bearing the marks of battle and hasty repairs. The view below was unprecedented. Ships from across the galaxy filled Earth's orbital spaces, their designs as varied as the species that crewed them. Captain Rachel Hammond stood in the newly constructed Grand Chamber, a massive space station that had been jointly built by 20 different species to serve as the headquarters for what was now being called the Galactic Concordat. The chamber itself was a marvel of xenoengineering, able to accommodate beings that breathed different atmospheres, existed in various gravity conditions, or even consisted of pure energy. If someone had told me a year ago that Earth would become the center of galactic diplomacy, Harrison mused, standing beside her, I would have recommended they visit the ship's psychiatrist. Rachel smiled, though her eyes held a hint of sadness. The price of this progress was never far from her thoughts. Dr. Naveen's sacrifice had become legendary, not just among humans but across the galaxy. The Zylaxians had recovered completely, their civilization preserved, and the modified treatment had been successfully adapted to protect other species from similar biological weapons. First speaker Viller approached, their iridescent skin now showing the bright, healthy colors of their restored people. "The council is ready to begin," they announced, their translator now perfectly attuned to human speech patterns. "You should be there, Captain Hammond." After all, this moment would not be possible without human intervention. The council chamber was a sight that would have been impossible just months ago. Representatives from over 500 spacefaring civilizations gathered in concentric rings, their forms ranging from the nearly human to the completely alien. The Tekari cybernetic interfaces gleamed alongside the crystalline structures of the luminous collective, while the Varan's liquid environment spheres floated near the energy beings of the myriad. At the center of it all stood a simple memorial, a holographic representation of Dr. Naveen, eternally caught in the act of helping others. The inscription below, written in every known language, read, "In memory of those who gave everything to preserve life in all its forms. The shadow ships have been identified," announced the Tekari representative, their cybernetic eyes projecting data for all to see. "They belong to a species that calls themselves the Architects. For millennia, they have been conducting what they call evolutionary pruning, eliminating civilizations they deem unworthy of joining the galactic community." Murmurs of anger and fear rippled through the assembly. The Architects had been attacking isolated species for countless generations, using engineered pathogens to eliminate those they considered inferior or unpredictable. The Zalaxians had been targeted because their rapid technological advancement had drawn attention. But they never anticipated humanity. Wheeler added, their colors shifting to patterns of pride and gratitude. A species they considered primitive demonstrated something they had never encountered: the willing sacrifice of self for others, the determination to help strangers at any cost. Rachel stepped forward, her voice carrying across the chamber. "We're not special because of our technology or our intelligence. We're special because we refuse to accept the idea that some lives are worth more than others. We're special because when we see suffering, we act to stop it, regardless of the risk to ourselves." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of agreement expressed in hundreds of different ways. The Architects' attempt to divide and conquer had instead united the galaxy in ways they never could have predicted. "The Galactic Concordat is more than just an alliance," Rachel continued. "It's a statement that we reject the idea of evolutionary pruning. Every species has something to contribute, something unique to offer. The Architects saw diversity as a weakness to be eliminated. We see it as our greatest strength." The new treaties were signed that day, agreements that would change the course of galactic history. Earth, despite its relative technological infancy, was chosen as the seat of the Concordat, not because of its location or resources, but because humanity had demonstrated the qualities that would be needed to unite such diverse species: adaptability, compassion, and unshakable determination. Research facilities were established across the solar system, combining the knowledge of hundreds of civilizations. The mysterious biology that had made humans naturally resistant to the Architects' weapons became the foundation for new medical breakthroughs. Earth's universities began accepting students from across the galaxy, while human students ventured out to learn from alien mentors. But perhaps most importantly, the Architects' shadow of fear began to lift. Their weapon, the threat of extinction through engineered disease, had been neutralized. Their strategy of isolation and division had failed. The galaxy was united now, watching and waiting for their next move. Standing in the council chamber, Rachel touched the base of Dr. Naveen's memorial. "We did it," she whispered. "We showed them who we really are." Harrison joined her, adding quietly, "But this is just the beginning, isn't it?" Rachel nodded, looking out at the assembled representatives of a united galaxy. The Architects were still out there, and there would be other challenges to face. But humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or technologically superior beings, but as the ones who would stop at nothing to help others, the ones who saw strength in diversity and unity in adversity. "Yes," she replied, watching as human diplomats mingled with beings from across the cosmos, their differences forgotten in the spirit of cooperation. This is just the beginning, and whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Above them, Earth turned serenely, its orbital spaces now filled with the ships of 1,000 worlds. The planet that had once seemed so isolated in the cosmos had become the heart of something greater, a testament to the power of human compassion and determination to change not just a moment, but the very course of galactic history. The shadow ships never returned to Earth's system, but their legacy remained. A galaxy united not by fear or force, but by the simple human principle that everyone deserves help when they need it, regardless of who or what they are. It was a principle worth dying for, as Dr. Naveen had proved, and one that would guide humanity and their new allies into whatever challenges the future might hold.